Cali, I got the West, man. Deuce got the Crest. So, man, what they gonna do now? Put the West and the Crest together, man. Montgomery, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Atlanta, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Birmingham, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Mobile, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Down south, showing no sign. Got the clubs at the club, we shaking that thing. Got the young player coming up on the run down. See the club and they don't see slime. Like real tight, pockets and rice. He can't cheat to the end of the night. Got the screw coming out, got to get the club high. You know how to guide. Everybody wanna be down with the side. 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 Everybody trying to get down with the side.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This is your boy Tight, and I got BGZ with me. What's happening? I always
They say who that? Yeah, we that. What's going on? What's happening? Free Lunch Podcast.
Man,
what's going on, Tight?
Not too much, man. I be stealing your what's happening.
It's all good.
Man,
It's all good.
how you been, sir? What's been going on?
I'm blessed, man. Everything going good. We made it into 2015. Just celebrated that 33rd birthday. So we riding this thing on out. Looking at life a little bit differently. Putting a lot of energy into this Free Lunch Podcast and this New South movement. So things are looking up. How's everything going your way?
It's going good, sir. It's going good. Let me ask you this. No flag zone. No flag zone. They know better.
Turn it.
Hey, I'm still listening to that No Flex Zone and the No Flex Zone dudes, man. What you listening to these days?
I'm listening to a little bit of everything. I discovered this mixtape. This guy Travis Scott, he's a new hip hop artist out of Houston that has worked with Kanye West over at Good Music and is now signed to T.I. label Grand Hustle. So he got some tracks that jamming. He did some work with Young Thug and Rich Homie Quan. So it's of that generation, but it jamming. So that's what I'm listening to, along with everything else that they playing on the radio. So you on the No Flex Zone, dude?
Man, I've been on these No Flex Zone dudes for a minute. So it's funny because I was listening to, I listen to a number of other podcasts in addition to Free Lunch Podcast, and one of those is Evening Jones with Bomani Jones, and he did an episode where he basically talked about what's the name of the art thing that you went to in Miami?
Art Basel.
Art Basel. So he did a show. Basically, he resides in Art Basel, and on this particular, he resides in Miami. And Art Basel was in Miami this past year. Is it normally in Miami?
Yeah, it's always. They actually have it in different. I think they have one over in Europe and stuff. But in terms of the U.S., it's always in Miami. It's the first week in December.
Right. Okay.
So it runs from like Tuesday or something to Sunday, the first week in December.
Okay. Well, on this particular show, he started talking about one of the many parties he went to that weekend, and he went to a show, a party that was basically put on by Might Well Made It, and so it was funny. It was funny because he said, "So I'm at a Might Well Made It party, and first off, I wouldn't even know who Might Well Made It was." And so he started talking about, he said, if he came up to me with a Might Will Made It t-shirt on, I wouldn't even know if that was Might Will Made It. So then he started talking about how, in addition to him being at the Might Will Made It concert, he said the No Flex Zone dudes were there. And they, long story short, they ended up putting on a performance. Might Will Made It got on the ones and twos. He dropped some No Flex Zone dudes song, and next thing you know, the No Flex Zone dude done got crunk. They all on top of the bar, and they done basically shut the party down. they on top of the bar. So them dudes, man, I don't know what it is about that song, dude, but I love that song.
Yeah, they got another one, man. That go pretty hard too. That You Ain't Got No Life song. So It's definitely for a younger demographic, but if you catch wind of it, you're gonna be bobbing your head to it. I think that's what happened to Bomani Jones. He got caught up in it. He was vibing to it.
He did. He also talked about man, I'm telling you, that's a pretty interesting podcast, Evening Jones. The other one he talked about, he said he went to the Stevie Wonder concert in Atlanta. I think this might even been the one you went to.
I would.
But he said he don't think Stevie Wonder blind, dog.
Man, I believe that, dog. I was telling people that while I was at the show and after the show. Stevie Wonder can see, man. You see Stevie Wonder in live performance, man. Stevie Wonder is moving around on that stage and all that kind of stuff, dog. I'm like, Stevie can see a little bit, and he got 6 children too. So, come on, man.
So he think it's a conspiracy. He think it's a conspiracy.
These years.
He said all these years. He said, so for those of you that believe Stevie Wonder to be blind, you have to give him just as much right to say Stevie ain't blind or he is not blind.
I swear, man, I had the same feeling. That right there, like they've been playing this game for all these years. That Stevie Wonder blind, man, it's a marketing ploy. Stevie can see that joker be moving around on that stage so smooth, man. It's crazy.
Man. So shout out to the Evening Jones. For those of you that listen to different podcasts in addition to Free Lunch podcast, I think you'll enjoy the Evening Jones podcast. But I think we got an interesting show today. During our prep, we kind of talked about a few things, and I think this would be one where we let the audience in, really the female audience. Because I think this show is going to be a lot for the female audience and let them really in on some of the conversation that the boys be having. We call ourselves the boys, but let them in on some of the conversation that we have just in our inner circle. What you think about that?
Yeah, that's true. And then also be good for guys, too, that are listening to this that might be, dealing with some of these same things or have had these same thoughts and may feel like they might be the only ones going through those type of things. A lot of times it makes the process of growth easier when you know that it's people that are dealing with the same issues and have the same questions and concerns that you have. So it really will be one that women can draw something from. So we just ask that all the lady listeners on this particular one just sit back, relax, and listen and take it all in. And same thing for the guys, just listen and see where some of these things kind of cross over into what you're dealing with in your own personal life, and think about it and find ways that, maybe we change our approach to this topic that we're going to talk about, or keep it the same, or whatever you need to do. So I think this will be one that can stretch across those gender lines.
You think it's going to be? So
how do you talk about it?
How do you label this one? Is it heavy? Is it light? How would you label this particular topic? Because we've gone pretty deep on some of our topics.
This one probably fall in the. I would probably say this one fall in the middle, because there's probably gonna be some comedy in there. Some people will get some of that comedic entertainment from some of the things that are probably gonna be shared, and then on the flip side, it's gonna be some real talk, real issues, real concerns. So I think this one will fall in middle.
I'm kind of hesitant. I'm hesitant on this particular show and this episode, only because it's really everywhere.
It's everywhere. It is. Ain't no real like black or white defined answer to it, because it deals with individuals on individual terms, and so it's hard to find like just a cut and dry resolution or explanation for why things are, which is a beautiful thing if you think about it, because it opens up that dialogue and that conversation that we seek when we do these podcasts.
Yeah,
but I'm like you too. Like this one could end up anywhere, and I'm gonna try hard not to incriminate myself.
Well, you know what your boy Willie say? I will not answer any questions under the grounds that I may incriminate myself. Willie wouldn't answer no questions.
He kept saying it.
I would not answer any grounds I would not answer any questions under the ground that I may incriminate myself. So
He kept saying it too, man. He kept saying that.
So I think it's about that time, man. I think we about that time to get them a little sense of what we're gonna be talking about.
All right, let's do it. Do it for the vine. 2015. Let's go.
Ooh, if they gleam in the sun while they spin and they fit on my truck, then I could remember. And if it came in the sack, no stems, no seeds in the bag, girl, I could remember. And if they drip from my wrist, they look like they shine like new, then I could remember. But oh, girl, I forgot to be your lover. When she starts bringing up old dirt and the fights keep getting worse, finding numbers in her purse, you better put that woman first. If it wasn't for the... And when she, and you know she a ring, she starts playing little games. Come in and late from work. You better put that woman first. I'm trying to karaoke. I'm trying to karaoke with it, and I done skipped to the net verse.
That's tough, man. I think that's the thing that's overlooked a lot of times when people start talking about karaoke. That's a challenge because a lot of times you'll be singing these songs off of the radio and in your car, you'll be making up words and saying the wrong words and have a melody. But when you get to karaoke and then you actually see what the artist is saying and trying to fit it into the music, it's hard. So that's why I stay away from that karaoke, but it's harder. It's harder than first observed.
It can be, but let's use that song to transition into today's topic, and just to get the audience some background as to what we're going to be discussing, and really in the beginning we gave you a brief teaser into what we want to talk about today, and what that is recently, you know, me, BG, a few friends, we were kind of just catching up and sitting around the coffee table and just really discussing like different dating situations and where each of us were in our current relationship status. And we kind of started talking about just women in general and started just talking about some of the different types of women each of us have dated or currently were dating, and just talked about how we're meeting more. It seems like we're meeting, as we get older, we're meeting more and more women that have gone through this sort of abuse. And I'm not typically saying physical abuse, but in some cases, I've been very shocked by how many women personally I've met that have dated men that have physically abused them. But in addition to dating guys that physically abused them, just dating guys that really broke women down, and not really built them up. This sort of pouring knowledge and pouring wisdom and pouring the different things that the guys have learned into these women. So we started talking, we as the boys, and we just started reflecting on how many women that we're meeting at our current age that are kind of just broken down. And so that conversation kind of spun into what is the role of the man as far as when and how much should he, like, is it his role to build her up? And obviously I think the answer to that question is yes. But at what point do you decide to invest in building that woman up? Is one kind of question we can address today. And then another question is to say, pre-building her up, have we contributed to the breaking down if we never advanced to the building her up, if that makes sense? So it's kind of two different directions. Like I said earlier, I think we'll probably start off on these two questions and this particular topic, and then we may venture off into who knows where. But just to give us some groundwork to get started today, really get your insight and your thoughts into essentially that opening statement I just provided, and those two questions?
As we get older, all of us, the men, and when we get older, there are, there are ongoing opportunities for us to be in relationships and be out of relationships and be in another relationship and get out of it. And so, of course, each time the relationship ends because of something, and it could be there's a dramatic end to the relationship, and it has some lasting effect on the person. And you can either learn from that experience, or you can sulk in that experience, and it basically change your whole approach to how you approach relationships in the future and all those type of things. And like you say, as we've gone along this road and we're encountering women that have been in previous relationships, and some of those relationships have been damaging. And so it affects when we come into the picture and we're trying to get to know the young lady and things like that. There, of course, are going to be these walls and these barriers that have been placed because of those previous experiences, which does bring to us the question of, okay, how much time are we going to invest into breaking these walls down? Is this person worth the investment of the time? Is there enough potential there to say, okay, it's okay to put that time forward? And so we have to ask these questions, but then in answering those questions, we also have to look at, are we being realistic and are we being fair when we're assessing these situations? Are we being patient enough to say, okay, well, yeah, that she's been through something, but some of the responsibility may rest on me helping her come through that situation. So it's hard to say, and I think that each situation calls for a different assessment and a different resolution. But I know personally that has been a big question, is like, am I wasting time by investing in trying to get to know, or is this of quality? Is this worth me spending that time? So I feel like we do have a role, and we talk more about what that role is. And I definitely know I have been a contributor to where I did something within a relationship that hurt the woman that I was in a relationship with. And so, of course, we got some responsibilities, man. We got some responsibilities as men to build our women up, to give them confidence, to rise their self-esteem. And at the same time, we've got a responsibility to not hurt them, to not put them in situations to where we endanger their being and endanger their spirits and all that type of stuff.
So I guess we can put to bed, or we can agree that it is a man's responsibility to help the self-esteem, to build the woman up, and to help her to grow, essentially. Right. So, and I'm pretty sure we got a number of female listeners that says the same for the guy. It'd probably be a good idea maybe to have a female to provide their opinions via email, on the blog spot website, or to just shoot us a text or whatever to give us your opinion on you having to build guys up. But it's just been interesting as I've dated women. I've just noticed how it just shocked me when I would ask them, have you ever been abused? And over 50% or so would say yes, they've been physically abused. And it kind of shocked me that the number was so high, because I didn't expect for something like that to really happen on a regular occurrence. But not only in the physical aspect of that, but also in the psychological, the self-esteem, just the breaking down of the individual person. We kind of talked about men and women, and I guess, do you think that women are more fragile in that aspect? And the reason I ask you that is because I try to reflect over my personal experience to see if I've allowed different circumstances and situations to alter how I deal with relationships. And I don't think I have. Maybe that's a question for maybe a few of the ladies I've dated in the past. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the women, by nature, for the most part, are more emotionally tapped in, and when it comes to dealing with a man or being in a relationship, they're going to give their all, and most times they're going to modify and adjust their lives to suit what it is that guy is doing or what he wants. And she's looking for ways that she can please him and keep peace in a relationship and all of those type of things. So if a guy comes in and, you know, there's that initial attraction and they have that initial connection, and then down the road the guy changes and becomes physically abusive or mentally abusive, then oftentimes a woman will try to adapt and try to make things better, try to be patient with the guy, try to work with him, and praying that he will turn that corner and start treating her better. But they invest themselves so deep emotionally that it oftentimes puts them in a disadvantage, and it hurts them when they encounter a guy that's not willing to cultivate and build them up. So I feel like a lot of that is just based off of just the natural essence of what a woman brings to the table, and they'll ride with you. Like, they'll come up with every reason to why, you know, he's a good guy, but he's doing all these things. And so I've talked to some of my friends that have been in situations like that, and it's hard for me to understand, like, you know, if he does that, if he's treating you that kind of way, why don't you just leave the dude alone? You know, just stop talking to him. But then on the flip side, they'll come and speak to the good things that he does and kind of making excuses for the situation. And it's like, well, I can understand that because you want the best for your situation. You want the best for him, and you're trying your best to make things better. So they are at a disadvantage, I think, just based off of nature.
At what point do you decide to say, okay, I'm going to try to invest in this relationship and invest in this individual as a person versus actually creating? Because there's a period, right, where you're just getting to know that person, and we as guys can make a determination as to how far we are willing to take this person to go with this person. And let's be quite honest and quite frank. If you end up just sleeping with her or just having sex with her and don't take anything for her, that could be damaging. So as we get older and as we mature, at what point do you transition from that supernatural and from that natural to that supernatural? You see what I'm saying? And we talked about this, right? And the argument was made that supernatural and this whole being monogamous versus being what's the right word for it? Polygamous versus being monogamous. So at what point do you transition?
That's hard. Each situation calls for a different response. And in my opinion, the first step, though, is knowing what it is that you want and knowing what your expectations are and making sure that your expectations are real. And then when you go into your search for a potential partner, when you're dating and you're going out and you're asking questions and you're in different types of situations and environments, you're seeing how that person reflects those expectations. And then with your expectations, I think you have to also know what your what the people call like deal breakers. So it's like those things that you just can't deal with. You can't tolerate them in a relationship. You won't have them. Some of my deal breakers are things like an inconsiderate person or a person that's inconsistent that can't count on, or someone that's just all out selfish. Like those are deal breakers for me, to the point that if I see those, and I'm probably about to move on, because I personally feel like those are character reflections.
But do you move on, at those points? Do you move on, or do you just say, okay, she still look nice, so I'm a have sex with her. I'm trying not to say any other. I'm gonna have sex with her, and then I'm just gonna basically, in so many ways, contribute to breaking her down.
That happens. That has happened before.
So let's stay right there for a minute. Why do we as men operate in that manner? So this goes back to me, that whole super
scumbag. For the most part. We have to mature out of our scumbag nature. We have to mature out of it. So yeah. So then it's like, okay, well, like you say, we guilty of that. Once you date and you establish, okay, she got these deal breakers, but she still look good. Then it's gonna be like, okay, well, this ain't gonna be nothing long term, so might as well just enjoy the short term. So that's that scumbag nature, and then into contributing to, you know, she might have different feelings, or if we are intimate, there's you know, these other emotions and these other feelings and expectations may arise in her mind. She may feel like we got something, we building something, and then in your mind it's like, nah, it was just good for the right now, good for the moment, for the sex. So we do have contributed, and that, I think that is a place where a lot of that damage does take place.
And that's kind of what I want this whole topic to be about, right? In my opinion, I think this is the meat and the potatoes of what we're trying to get at with this whole podcast. For me, and again, it may be. I think it's easy to answer that question once you identify that she has all the right tools, that you're willing to at that point invest in building her up. And then maybe there's a question after you start or you initiate the build-up process, how long are you willing to invest in that time before you just say, okay, I'm done with this. So that's kind of a post conversation that can be had. But while we're here, my whole thought process is, why do guys come to the conclusion that she doesn't really have all the qualifications that we're looking for in that other person? And let's be honest, I'm saying that you can pretty much tell, or you can get a sense of whether this is going to be something long term or short term. Why is it that guys have a hard time admitting at that short time that this is something short time, being honest and saying, hey, this is something short time, and essentially moving on, versus keeping the lady around and essentially contributing to this whole idea of breaking her down? Black woman is one of the most, or women are just the most influential creatures on this earth. They're nurturing, and they're going to raise. In a lot of situations, they are they raise the kids. They are just loving, and in so many ways, and in so many situations, just smarter than men. But yet and still, we'll tend to break them down.
Yeah, and take advantage of their vulnerability.
Why? That to me, that's the question. Why at that point? Yeah, why at that point when we know that she's not the one, but we continue to drag her along and essentially do all those things that are contrary to what we should be doing.
Because we are immature and selfish. We want our cake and eat it too. So we know that she's got these good qualities, but like you say, we've determined that it ain't nothing for the long term, but we want to take advantage of those good qualities that she has while still on the hunt for the one. So we'll hold this down until we find the one. We'll keep that in the back pocket and on reserve until the other one comes along, which is very selfish. It keeps the female that you're dealing with in limbo and not knowing what's going on. It's very disloyal, and it's selfish, man. It's selfish. And then when something else comes on, they say the grass being greener, so something else looks greener, then you leave her alone and just jump ship and start messing with somebody else, and now she's left trying to figure out what happened. Sometimes it's internalized, like, was it something that I did that made him go to somebody else? And so it just brings about that whole you know, that whole negative energy that affects them. And like you say, it probably lingers and stays with them all the way into the next situation that they get into. But for us, it's just that we selfish, man. We selfish. We want what we want, and we feel like that everybody need to cater to us, and the woman should cater to what we trying to do. And if she don't like it, she just got to deal with it, because we gonna do what we want to do.
But how can we sit up here then and say
Scumbag
that we?
syndrome.
How can we sit up
Come
here?
be on the podcast, man. You asked me. That's
No. You didn't even let me finish the question. No, what I'm saying is seriously. We
kidding,
we hang around a lot of good guys. We're good guys. We fall short, like you said, but it's interesting because we're quick to say we're good guys and we have the right intentions, but yet and still we can, at times, we have contributed to the breaking down of a woman. And I just wonder, as the society continues to pretty much become more social media driven, we're more connected, but yet we're still more disconnected because people don't get to know each other, right? And you see less and less of individuals really getting to know each other, but more and more people having relationships and essentially continuing a cycle, in my opinion, a cycle that hasn't been addressed and there really hasn't been conversation around it. And I just wonder, is there a solution to really addressing such a topic?
Due to that lack of conversation that you're talking about, like, so that leaves us just trying to figure this whole thing out. Relationships and love and all such as that, because, you know, you look at people that are in relationships, like for me, like my parents and my aunts and uncles, you know, you ask the question about the process and all that type of stuff. Like you don't really, I've never really gotten a clear answer as to what to look for and how to approach dating and things like that. And my parents have been together for 30 years. I never got that conversation. I never got that blueprint or that instruction. The only answer that I get is just you'll know. You'll know when you find the person that you're supposed to be with. What the hell that mean?
And you get that answer from your from parents,
from friends, from everybody that like may be in a marriage, the epitome of relationship. And so that's not really anything that you can work from a proactive nature. So throughout our process from puberty forward, you know, we just going off of what we talk about in the locker room, what the fellas tell you how it should go, you know, what your older siblings tell you should go, and what TV and all these other things tell you about relationships and how they're supposed to go. So we left out here to our own devices. And when you do left out to your own devices, then you're going to do a lot of stupid stuff. You're going to go out there, you're going to just operate from what you want, from a selfish standpoint, and you're not really going to take into consideration how your actions in a relationship affect the other person until you've been in some situations and you caused this type of trauma and you affected this person and you see the effect. For me, it came down to seeing like what my actions were doing, like what the consequence of stuff that I was doing had on somebody else, not so much on what it had on me, but how it affected somebody else. And then you get to a point of maturity to where you look at it and like, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be the person that's around here, you know, hurting people, and then just going on about my business.
And the thing about it, if you think about it, but if you think about it, the people that we are hurting, if we did contribute to that as men, 9 times out of 10 or however many the percentage is are good people. You see what I'm saying? Because we're dealing with good people, and we're good people as in our situation. So it's not like we are. If we continue to stay on this whole break down conversation, it's not like we are bad people. It's like, okay, we've essentially, because of immaturity or whatever reason, or bad intention, we've basically misled and manipulated because of that vulnerability. And I just wonder if we continue, if men continue on that path, what is that going to do just to the overall woman in general? Because it seems like there's less commitment and less honesty, but it's more of selfishness and more of getting what I can from the situation.
Across the board.
Across the board. I would agree with that.
Across the board, men and women. And hence the song, these women ain't loyal. But I think what we're seeing is the response or the effect to what men have done for so long. And so now women, they are more in position to do things the way that they want to do it. They don't have to put up with it. And so they playing the game. And so what you see a lot of is like the stuff that dudes have done for years and years and years. You meet a female, she playing the game like a dude. And you're like, what? The inconsistency, you could almost, you met a woman, you could almost count on that if you called her, she would answer the phone and she would call you and you would have this back and forth. It was a lot of reciprocation, stuff like that. But now it ain't like that. So where we used to do the whole 72 hours before you call the female and all that kind of stuff, you might get the same thing. You might be really digging the chick. And she put you on the back burner, and it's the total switch. I feel like in the way that we interact because of so many years and so many women and this history of women being broken down by men and our actions and stuff like that, that they're just flipping the script. And it's like, well, if you're gonna do that, then this is what I'm gonna do to protect myself and to keep me from being all depressed and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to respond like this, which is, in my opinion, outside of their nature, but they're working against their nature to protect themselves from their hurt and their heartache, which is a crazy thing. And I feel like it's also widening that gap in terms of communication and connection. It's like things are just so different now. It's crazy.
It's great. How do you?
It's crazy, but
let's flip the script. So the guys that may have been into a woman that may have been heartbroken or may have been mistreated, and I've gone into that relationship, into the next relationship where essentially I haven't been as open, I haven't been as vulnerable, and because of that, it essentially, I was basically had been beaten up or what have you, not physically, but just emotionally beaten down. And essentially, you go in that situation similarly with the baggage, with the selfishness, gonna get out of it what you can. So in that next situation, I don't even know if I could build that woman up. You see what I'm saying?
And then, like I say, ain't no expert, no relationship expert on none of this. This is a lot of just personal experience and reflection. And coming from a situation like of being hurt and dealing with someone that be hurt, you have to open up. And I think that's just a part of your natural process and your natural growth pattern in determining what you want out of a relationship. You just get to the point to where you say, so I'm willing to open myself up again. That's for me, the only way that you can progress forward. Because if you continue to dwell in the past hurt and the past experiences, you're going to create a blockade that is going to be hard for someone to enter in and really get to know you. And then on the flip side, it's going to be hard for you to get to know that person. And so you're going to end up wasting a lot of time because no one is willing to be vulnerable. I think the number one thing in relationship is you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to show to show your weaknesses and show your failures. And I think the sign of the person that you are supposed to link up with is one that can be empathetic to your vulnerabilities and empathetic to your weaknesses, and are willing to stand beside you and strengthen you where you are weak. So for people that are looking for relationships or trying to determine if a person is for them, I think that's where you look first. Is like, okay, I've expressed my vulnerabilities. I've expressed to you where I've come from, what has happened to me, why I feel the way that I feel. And if that person responds and say, I understand that, let's work through that together, I've been through a similar situation, I can help you, or just be there, then that's a good sign of somebody that is willing to invest in you, and somebody that you should probably be patient with and willing to invest in each other. So if you can see each other's vulnerabilities, I think that puts you in a good place to grow. But somebody that takes advantage of your vulnerabilities, they know that you've been hurt before, or they know that you come from a sad background, and nothing that they do pours back into you or stabilizes you where you are. Everything that they do to you tears you down or leaves you in more and more limbo. Then that's your sign that that person is probably not the one for you, and it probably would be better to not invest a whole lot of time into that individual. That's the way that I see it. That's the thing that I try to communicate to people, that when we talk about these certain type of situations, is just how well does a person fulfill you, lift you up, support you when you're down? How much are they there for you when it would be easier for them to turn their back on you? And that's the whole loyalty thing.
That's why I think this conversation is very vital. And the reason I say that is because you have a lot of just good people in general that are having, and I kind of survey my inner circle, I survey close friends and family, and I just notice how a lot of good people are either single or they've gotten a divorce. And and it bothers me to the point to where I'm like, why are there so many good people that are single? And then I guess the second one is, why are there so many good people that are getting divorces? And then I started, we're kind of jumping and going in different directions and different topics and conversation, as we stated in the beginning we would. But I kind of wonder if it has something to do with this whole communication thing and this whole people just being broken down to the point to where they can't trust anyone. And because they can't trust anyone, they take a selfish approach to the person that they're in a relationship with. Because it's just ironic how you have good people that, to me, that can't seem to be in a relationship, or they can't find the right person, or whatever the reasons may be.
And good people is relative, in terms of how you define a good person. Some good people have high expectations and high standards. And what we find is that as time goes on, we're working into a society to where high standards and high morals and high values is not real common. So that might have something to do with where you see that discrepancy and that, that increased number of what you call good people being single. Is just that they have expectations and they want to be matched up with somebody that's going to meet them where they are and be equally yoked with them.
But do you think it could also have something to do with what we talked about earlier in the conversation, where you've been emotionally broken down so much, or self-esteem has been lost so much, to where moving forward is all about you?
No doubt. There's a protection mechanism, and I think that's a natural response, man. If you've been through the storm time after time, you meet a good person, it goes along for a few months, and then something tumultuous happens. And it happens more than one time, it's going to be hard for you to get rejuvenated and energized about anybody, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, it's going to be good for a minute, but when is the bad stuff gonna start happening? And and we speak to that emotional capacity of the woman who gets emotionally engaged. It's gonna be hard for her to pick back up and start all over again. Hence why a lot of people you find stay in relationships because in bad relationships because of the fear of having to start over again.
Interesting.
Like who wants to do that? Who wants to do that? For us, because of kind of the way the dynamic is set up, that it's more women out there and the ratios are off the charts. It's easy for us to detach if we see something we don't like. Okay, well, and we already ain't really that emotionally intelligent anyway. So we see something we don't like, we just I'm gonna leave that alone and go on to something else with no lag period in terms of having to get ourselves together. We just jump from situation to situation much easier than a woman does. So what you're speaking to is a real thing. That walls are built and that fear exists. And a woman will sometimes just choose to do for her own self, and take that whole selfish approach and not put herself in the line of fire again.
And I think, to be honest with you, I think this is the challenge that men and women, but I guess men really need to focus or try to build up that other person or that other individually, regardless of from beginning to end, right, of that relationship. So even if that means being honest and saying, okay, I know this is not going to work, so rather than contribute to breaking her down, whether it be taking advantage of her vulnerability sexually, I don't know if that's possible. I mean, I want to believe it's possible because I truly believe we are exponentially going in a downward spiral in regards to just the emotional strain that relationships are going through, and just the decrease in the increase in singleness and the decrease in longevity in marriages. And I wonder, there has to be some type of solution or some type of approach to take to reverse that downward spiral. And I'm wondering if being honest up front and really just communicating intentions up front can alleviate some of the hurt and the pain in the long run.
For our relationships, they're dictated by the level of respect. And respect is a word that's tossed around and used very lightly. But wherever the respect goes, that's where the relationship is likely to go. So if I respect you, no matter what degree of relationship that we in, if we're just in the acquaintance or the courtship phase or whatever, if I can maintain my respect for you, then I'm gonna respect your feelings. And so I can respectfully say that, okay, I like you, you're a great person, but for long term or whatever, I think we don't mesh well. I think we should go in a different direction. And respectfully saying that, like, I think there should be a respectful response to that. Sometimes you can come like that. You can come like that and be like, and I don't think this is working out with us off the rip with good intentions. And, the woman might not respectfully receive that. Or the guy, if you flip the script, the guy might not respectfully receive you saying that it's not going to work. They might have something to say, or they won't let it go. They won't hear what you're saying or listen to what you're saying, and they'll continue their pursuit even after you've told them that it's not going to work out. So respect, I think
that also speaks to that individual as well, because if they're going to still pursue you even though you've essentially told them that you were not interested, then what does that say about that individual and that individual's self-esteem and their I guess the way that how they value themselves, their self-worth.
So yeah, that is to play the role in it too. So at the end of the day, respect, I think, is going to be the key for us as we relate one to another. There has to be respect.
I honestly don't know if this conversation is one that'll be taken seriously by the majority, right? And the reason I say that is how do you change a culture that parades and that celebrates essentially doing in a lot of ways the opposite of what we are talking about.
Yes, it's definitely an upward climb. And like everything else we talk about, is just sparking the mind of a few, and hopefully that multiply each one, teach one, and share some of the perspective. That's the battle. And I was, watching I've been watching a lot of stuff on YouTube and things like that, and talking about. I heard a snip talking about the women in relationships and all that kind of stuff. And basically, she was talking a lot about how the social system, especially this system that we live in America, and all of those type of things, of how it's set up to destroy the family structure. It's set up to tell women to treat men a certain kind of way. It's set up to tell men to treat women a certain kind of way. And all of those messages are really missing what we're talking about, missing that respect and that understanding and that patience. You very seldomly get programming, TV shows, radio shows, or whatever that speaks to respect and loving and lifting people up and all that. We surrounded by tearing people down and drama and fighting and all those type of things. And so our system, our society, and the things that are embedded in our society are actually taught to tear us down, to tear down our family structure. So we're working against that. As individuals, we're working against those forces that are out there to keep us from achieving what the goodness of relationships and being able to have strong networks of people that respect each other and can work well with one another. So the best that we can do is just put it out there, what we've gotten, what we've obtained from different sources, and put it in this format and hopefully help somebody. But yeah, we are fighting. We are fighting a monster out there that is definitely attacking our relationships and marriages and things like that.
We are, and I think you made a good point, because it kind of made me think of something I stated in the previous podcast about, I know I talk about Mona Scott a lot, but also another person that if we really wanted to be fair and add to the list of some of the programming that's being put out there is Shonda Rhimes. And if you really look at her protagonists in the two shows that I watch, one of them I'm really starting not to watch, Scandal, anymore, and I'm considering not watching How to Get Away with Murder when that comes back on. But look at the two protagonists in both of those shows. Essentially, it's great to have two leading African American women as in the leading role, but essentially look at what they are. Look at what they are reflecting in the show. In order to be powerful, they're sleeping with all these other people and cheating and not having stable relationships and essentially making it seem as though unconsciously or consciously they're giving you the perception that it's okay to live that type of lifestyle. And how do you? And again, we're kind of going off into different tangents, but I think it still all centers around, this show has been really around just really the different people's emotional stability and essentially we as human beings helping each other to build each other's character and self-worth and self-esteem, and not consciously continuing to break individuals down, but in order to create a better society. But when you talk about social issues and really the social structure not being at a place to where we can correct or fix these type of low self-esteem issues that we're talking about, it's sad.
And then to go back to what we started off with, the role of the man. And then if you look at those shows that you're talking about, a lot of it, where are the strong men? Where are the strong, disciplined men that are lifting up the family, that are serving as that father figure or that guy that's reinforcing his woman in a true, genuine relationship? Where are those? I don't watch those shows, but I would probably imagine that there's no highlighting of a man acting from that place, a man acting from a place of sensitivity and admiration for his woman, and being his woman's number one cheerleader. Do you see that on those shows?
No, you don't. You don't see those on those shows.
So you don't have any examples. You don't have anything that's talking to men about what real manhood is as it relates to treating a woman, protection of that womanhood, and lifting and building the woman up and being her backbone and her support when she's going through these things. You don't see anything. All you see is that recycling of this male image of this chauvinistic, only thinking about sex and financial power and all those type of things. But that ain't real life, man. And that's not what we need. We got to get back. And so people will say that that's entertainment and it is what it is. But that stuff is teaching people. The television
it brands your brain.
Your brain watch it. That's what the television was set up for. Set up to program people, because I can create a world for you by TV and you'll think that world is real. I was watching something the other day and was watching like the cowboy and the Indians, old Western, and just based off of that whole genre, it painted people's perception of who the Indians were and who the cowboys were. The enemies were a threat. The Indians were enemy and threat. The cowboys were great. Cowboys were white. The Indians were Indians. So now you've got people of whatever color they are watching these shows. They feel a certain way about white people, and they feel a certain way about the Native Americans, the Indians. So that's what TV is. So, I mean, that argument about it's just entertainment doesn't go far with me, because it's affecting, if it is not affecting our peers, it's affecting the younger people that are just as engaged in those shows as the older folk are, and they're learning from that. So for the listeners, is that look at what you're watching and seeing how it places people. How does it place women? What role is it placing women in? What role is it placing men in? And I think that is like the first step in kind of determining the quality of what you're watching, because the man has a role. The man needs to be present, and we have a responsibility as men to be that rock and to be that foundation, like we always say in these podcasts, for our homes and for our communities and for the circle and the space around us. And so without that, and without men being men and taking that rightful place in all that it means to be a man, nothing is going to be in order. Nothing is going to stand, because we have to be present and we have to be involved in doing what we've been set here to do. And one part of that is protecting these women.
And also, we also have to be responsible and not be hypocrites to the point to where we are contributing even on the front end with breaking down women, or even on the contrary, women breaking down men. Just being honest with one another. I think we've gone a lot of different directions with this particular podcast, which is essentially what the conversation that the boys have in general. We kind of start off on one topic and we kind of transition to other topics, but I still think in us doing that, there's a common theme here, and it's really in a society that is essentially doing the total opposite of what we're talking about today, and that's really getting back to the origins of manhood and womanhood, figuring out how do we break through a society that is doing the exact opposite. and really during times of immaturity where we realize that this person may not be for us, really challenging ourselves as men or even women in their cases to have an honest conversation and say, hey, this is not going to work, and rather than us continue this and maybe me contributing to lowering your self-esteem or abusing you mentally or what have you, that we just go in different directions, because there's a need to build both individuals up, and at the end of the day, that's really what we should be doing as people, is figuring out how to build one another up, how to contribute to each other's success, not allowing social media or the television, entertainment, and these different shows to essentially create a culture that is the total opposite of what our coexistence should be, because that's exactly what's happening. And even if you're around individuals that kind of operate and maneuver in that type of manner, it's absolutely wrong. And like I said, I'm pretty sure this conversation is in the minority. It's definitely not one that's going to be popular if a large audience listens to it. But I think it's one that's honest. I think it's one that's transparent. I think it's one that's plain. That it's time for us as men to be adults and to essentially try to create a new culture and a new movement that pushes family first, and that pushes building one another, and that pushes just being good people and looking out for one another.
And these are my just opinions. I don't profess to. Neither one of us profess to have the answers, especially when it comes to relationships, because we're just as in the gray area as everybody else. So not an expert, but just kind of just what goes on in my mind. And there'll probably be some people that listen to this and say, BG don't know what the hell he talking about. And they ain't going with none of it. And that's fine, because I'm a work in process and, just looking for information. I've done some reading and some stuff on this particular topic, and just looking at how, how the approach can be modified. The only thing that I would say in closing out this particular podcast is that even in, you date somebody and that doesn't work out, and you might end up dating somebody else, that, you date people that don't necessarily have to end up in it being a marriage. It probably, or it may not end up in a marriage, but at the end of the day, if it does end and you just decide to be friends or whatever, you want the person that you dealt with to have been made better from their experience with you. So I think that a lot of that speaks to what you do in that time that you share. You want to leave them in a better state than what they came out with, versus you don't want to break them down and have them worse off, and you be the reason for them being in a worse position. So that's just something that I'll pass along, and it'll probably have some bearing on the way that we interact, even in those early phases that we talked about. And another thing, Miles Monroe does a lot of talk about this. This is the I guess he'd be a reverend pastor, Miles Monroe, that just recently passed away. He has some good books and also has some good videos that talks about man's responsibility in cultivating a woman and helping a woman meet her max potential when you're in a relationship situation. So I would check him out. He has a great book, Waiting and Dating, which I've read. So if you're interested in that and interested in gaining some insight, I would direct you to him, because he's one I've had personal experience with. So hopefully this conversation has sparked something in somebody's mind, and let us know how you feel about it. FreeLunchPodcast.com. Also on Instagram, Free Lunch Podcast, and on Twitter, Free Lunch Pod C.
When she starts bringing up old dirt And the fights keep getting worse. Finding numbers in her purse. You better put that woman first. And you know she ain't wearing a ring. When she starts playing little games, coming in late from work, you better put that woman first. Free Lunch Podcast, and we out of here.
Out of here.